All right. It is a sport that has brought the country lots of national pride, especially in the past about 5 or 7 years. But could that be changing with what's been happening with the boardroom wars that have been happening at the Kenya Rugby Union? Is that just a passing cloud, or are we seeing the slide of rugby in Kenya into the doldrums that have been suffered by other sports in this country? To discuss this with us tonight, we've got two individuals who served on that board. One isn't serving anymore. Right on my immediate right, Godwin Karuga, former board member of the Kenya Rugby Union. Thank you very much for joining us, Godwin.
Thank you, John, for having me on.
And right in the center is a man who still is at the center of the board in one way or another, the honorary secretary. I've got it right, though.
How you doing?
Of the Kenya Rugby Union, Eddie Omondi. Thanks for joining us. And right on the end there is a man who calls himself a sports analyst. I don't know how true that is, but we'll accept it for today. Sports analyst Hilary Itela here to talk to us about the general trends in terms of rugby in Kenya today. And we'll start with what's on our screen right there. Part of the resignation letter from immediate former chairman Mwangi Muthea. That's just part of the quote that he spoke about. I feel my agenda of driving the game forward was being derailed. In between there, he talks about why it's being derailed, and some of the board members' integrity was not beyond reproach. And I'd like to start there and start with you, Godwin. Do you agree with this position about there being directors of the Kenya Rugby Union whose integrity can be questioned even today?
Unfortunately, yes.
Why is that the case? Who are these individuals, and why haven't they been unmasked?
I won't be at liberty to name them because there is what you'd call a forensic investigation that is ongoing regarding the activities of the union, and this is more so around the tournament. So me naming names or saying so and so has done this, or I think the best thing is to wait for the independent investigation that we so dearly need, so that we can clean up the game of rugby.
Yeah.
And I've been at the heart of running the tournament, so there's quite a lot of information that needs really to be clarified.
Information that you might have as well, right?
Oh, that I'm more than willing to share with the auditors, and I've already booked my schedule for that, so that's not a question. But in terms of who remains on the board, and part of the integrity is what really what the former chairman is echoing. Yes.
Because you agree with this sentence,
yes.
Are these also the reasons why you quit?
Part of the reasons, yes. If you remember, we did have a situation where we had a tournament 3-4 months ago, and we've been meeting the sponsors. We've met the Kenya Cup chairman, and everybody felt that as opposed to saying or accusing people just blindly or wild allegations, let's have an independent audit that so more or less checks not just the money aspect, but also the process, how we run our tournaments and all that. So that's the process, and the moment I felt that wasn't going as within the timelines that had been agreed upon with the sponsors,
you stepped aside.
And exactly.
All right, Eddie, there's another quote up there, still in the same letter. Serious questions by sponsors about some board members' involvement in grave issues of conflict of interest in supplying kit to the KRU, questionable procurement of airline tickets worth tens of millions of shillings. Eddie, I think in a response to this resignation, you wrote a letter as well, saying that the KRU's books are open. Are they open to audits that would reveal this sort of information?
Yes, they remain open. As a constitutional requirement, we have to carry out an audit at the end of every financial year, which we still will do at the end of this financial year, and part of the things we audit is our tournament.
All right.
So contrary to what everyone is saying, Eddie has refused an audit, the board members who have refused an audit, that is not the case.
It happens at the end of
It happens at the end of the year. You could say I wanted biased on this particular thing. Okay. That is allowable. All we questioned was the manner in which the audit was being carried, which were valid concerns.
We'll get to the audit in a moment, but let's stick with these allegations of corruption inside the board itself. Eddie, you're right. You're currently in the board. Can you name the individuals who have been accused or who evidence has been brought against with respect to graft?
I've personally accused no one. Neither have I seen evidence against anyone. So I'm not at liberty to comment about that.
All right.
Those remains the chairman comments. Former chairman.
So allegations of people who provide services to the Kenya Rugby Union at various stages have never been brought to your attention or to the attention of the board?
We have had them. They have been there all through. We've had board members who have done business with the union right from so many years back. And I think that will still be the case. We run rugby and their business opportunities, and more often than not, they fall to rugby guys. The issue of whether there's impropriety, how they fall onto it, again, that entirely on my side is not there. Questions have been raised about issues around the particular tournament, around an earlier tournament, Bamburi Super Series.
Yeah.
And we've been conceding enough to say, okay, if you have issues here, bring the evidence here, say this is the evidence I have against you, and then out of this evidence, demand this particular. But no evidence has been brought.
None whatsoever?
None whatsoever has been brought.
Okay, when the audit is complete, and as a lot of people within the sport expect,
yes,
a number of people will be named, what actions are going to be taken? Is there any laid out procedure on how to discipline board members?
We probably are a group of peers. If we sat next to you and you had allegations over and over, then there's not really an established mechanism, but as a board, if there's someone who's been implicated, then we'd ask you to step aside.
So there are no laid down procedures on how to deal with board members who are engaged in graft?
Unfortunately, no.
Yeah. Godwin, no procedures, yet you're handling tens of millions of shillings. Let me just jump to Hillary and just carry on with this. What is the overall effect? What's the net effect of these kinds of allegations on the sport itself, especially when it comes to the people who've been supporting it, the corporate sponsors that have been supporting this sport for quite a number of years now?
I think just a background, John, before I answer your question. What's actually happening right now is something that I wouldn't probably term as unique in itself. Of course, when you actually get to a level where there's exponential growth, be it in any sport, be it in any business, if you do not actually have the mechanism to ensure that you've got control measures, incidents like this will always pop up. Now, the difference between the Kenya Rugby Football Union, or rather Kenya Rugby Union as it is known right now, in 2014, compared to perhaps 2003 or 2004, was the total turnover was to the tune of about 10 or 11 million shillings, a bulk of which was the International Rugby Board grant. Fast forward 10, 11 years later, you've got a turnover to the tune of hundreds of millions, number one. You've not changed anything. There's absolutely nothing that has actually been placed on through to have a look at how the growth of the sport is being managed. You still have the same scenario whereby you've got fellows who actually get elected in every 2 years who still sit up in there to go around and pass a couple of things. So the thought leadership has not totally changed. So yeah, where I probably had about 10, 11 million shillings to go around and deal with about a decade ago. Now you've got hundreds of millions of shillings. You still have the same level of structure.
Yeah.
You don't actually have an independent person who can actually be held accountable. You have all the board members who have been politically voted in, still trying to go around and ensure that they can actually go back and fulfill on some of the electoral processes. And in that, you perhaps go and get the water muddied up between politics and levels of governance.
Okay.
Now, this is actually something that's not anything unique from anywhere in the world. It's actually how you go around and have your change management, you know, checked, placed up in order to move on through. Now, the effect that this probably has, if you actually ask me, I believe that in the past, these particular issues have been handled much better. If you actually ask me the timing, and more importantly, the content of that particular piece of information on the resignation from the chairman, to some extent would actually be termed as a poisoned well.
Yeah.
Poisoned because it basically goes around and states unequivocally, not only to the highest office in the country, the President of Kenya, not only to the Ministry of Sports,
but to sponsors as well, that there are problems within that.
I've actually tried to go on through and bring a level of sanity. You guys are pumping in tens, if not hundreds of millions of shillings into the sport.
And I can't do it.
And I really can't go around and give you that level of protection.
Eddie, you're still in the board.
Yes.
Hillary has talked about oversight. You've talked about it as well in terms of the punitive measures against people who'd be found responsible for graft.
Yes.
But there are steps that the KRU has been taking. For instance, the hiring of a CEO and a CFO and the entrenchment of those positions in the union. Why has it taken so long, though?
One, it's not taken too long. It's the process we opted to use this time. All before, we've never had a professional recruitment of a CEO. An individual woke up and said, this is a new CEO, and half the problems we had arose out of that, because someone was appointed the CEO without consultation from the board. What we're trying to do now, we're trying to have a process that first is professional. It's the only time in the history of rugby that we've gotten out a professional consultant to help with the recruitment process.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a slow process. It's a very slow process, and it has also had a lot of infighting, even from among us some board members. So it's a process that now is pretty much started. By February 1st, we'll have a new CEO and a new CFO in office. We're currently also working on our new 5-year strategic plan, which runs to an end.
Yes.
We've also hired a consultant to streamline and set up new administrative, human resources and financial processes.
So there are plans in place.
Yes, just to answer you again, all these plans have not been there, and these plans are coming in at this particular time. So if there was need for these plans to come in, I've been in office for 6 months, why didn't they come in earlier? Why did they have to wait for me to come? And then we are doing the plans now.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, Eddie and Godwin and Hillary will take a short break, and we'll come back and discuss some of the more controversial members of the board, and of course the election now of Gabriel Ouko, but more so moving forward, how to salvage a situation in rugby. The Other Kenya takes a short break. We'll be right back after this break. Send us your questions, and let's see if we could be able to get at least one of them in to the gentleman on my right with regards to what's happening in rugby in Kenya. Clement Langat says, please ask the board member why we fired the coach who took us to the 5th position globally and replaced him with Paul True. Paul True is a big talking point. You're currently on the board. We'll ask, or were you on the board when that happened?
He wasn't on the board.
He was on the board.
You were on the board.
Yes, I was on the board.
All right. So why was Mike Friday fired?
The final decision, Mike Friday was not fired. Mike Friday resigned and took up a job. And 2 days after resigning from the Kenyan Rugby Union, a coaching job, he took up the job with the USA Rugby. So in the end, he was not fired, but he actually did resign. But yes, was
he pushed out?
There was. He had been fired earlier.
Okay.
And within that, then there was a disciplinary process for a board member who was involved in that firing. He stayed on, and after that is when there was a court process.
Yeah.
Mike Friday stayed, and at the end of the season, Mike Friday resigned, and he had agreed to take the team to the World Cup. So
that's what he did.
Yes.
Eddie, you want to say something about the same?
No.
No, you don't.
I'll shut up.
All right. There's another question. There's another question here, though. The results of the audit, are they going to be made? Are they going to be made public? That's Bernard Luchelli who's asking.
Yes, they will be made public. Our audited accounts are made public.
Yeah.
Also to do with that audit, clubs need to know this, and individuals need to know this, that anybody involved in the game of rugby can actually, books are open to be seen by at least clubs.
Yes.
And clubs can appoint somebody like an auditor to look at those books. So really, even the clubs really need to take into this and realize that they can actually ask
and take it upon
Yes.
themselves. I'm going to try and push because we don't have much more time.
Yeah.
But let's speak very quickly about Paul True
Yes.
and his tenure as the coach of Kenya Sevens. Right now, we, at least a lot of people who watch rugby out there, feel like Kenya Sevens risks its core position within the rugby circuit. Do you think that that's going to happen, Eddie? Because you're in the board, and at least from a strategic level, you and the people within the board would be in charge of the future of Kenya Sevens.
I can say with a lot of certainty that we will not lose our core status.
Are you sure, given that a lot of players, or a number of players who were part of the core team that took us to the World Cup, don't seem to want to play for Kenya, aren't playing in Kenya, and therefore we have the kind of squad that would need a number of years of development?
Most of those players will come back, so I'm very certain that things will change. They had issues, which issues, again, we went ahead and addressed. We still kept communication channels with the players and with the management, and of course there's the fact that now we have a local coach. Also that would help us, because the thing also sometimes with the foreign coaches, how sure you they'll localize to understand.
To localize.
Yes.
So you're saying here that you've put your full faith behind Felix Ochieng, and there will be no changes up until we qualify for the Olympics.
Though he's running until the end of the season. The Olympics is in the other year, so until the end of the season, for a fact, he's not up for any review. or his contract is not up for any renewal.
Okay, just finally with you, I want to know why you're so confident about the players returning into the fold for Kenya Rugby, given that the issues that they had were with, I believe, performance contracting, and that was a board decision in terms of giving them those contracts. Why are you so certain? Has there been a specific communication from this group of players that they will come back into the fold now?
Yes, they have. Again, the issues were all misunderstood. It was not specifically performance. There were several issues, but all were pegged into performance. They had concerns, we had concerns, but now we've had a meeting of those concerns. Those very players are willing to come back. Yeah. Even as we speak, there are players who we've already given out contracts to. Contracts that for the first time we've sat down with them and discussed with them. That has never been the case.
Was it a mistake to hire Paul True?
I didn't hire Paul True.
You were part of the board that saw him through at least part of his tenure. Do you think it was a mistake?
I wouldn't say that directly. I think he came in through difficult times, and I think he was given a lot. That's a fact. And he didn't give us back much.
I don't think it was a mistake. And if you look at the World Sevens rugby in terms of successful coaches, out there you're going to get Gordon Tigent, who's been with New Zealand for a decade plus years, and his successes are known world over. From where we're coming from in terms of Mike Friday, where Kenya was ranked 5th, and in terms of where we wanted to go, is that the next best qualified coach is actually Paul True, with 2 world titles and 14 tournaments. I mean, on paper, he's the next best after.
Paper,
yes.
On paper, but there just didn't seem to be a gelling between him and the players.
Exactly.
Right from the start, actually.
Yeah.
Was there time to at least address the situation, sort of like a probation period, as you would have in other standard jobs? I
look at it, different coaches, different coaching style, and where we are. And granted, Paul True has been with a system that has worked among the first countries to turn professional in terms of how Paul True has developed as a player and as a coach. So in a nutshell, Paul True would, my assessment would be that he's used to a good finished end product.
He's used to systems.
Yes.
He's used to institutions.
Exactly.
Which we do not have.
Exactly.
Right.
And
what was the back end in terms of working on getting those systems to support Paul True? Very quickly as we go to Hillary.
To support that, Paul True was meant to be part of that, in the sense that he was meant to set up structures to work with the local coaches, so that whatever he's doing at the national level, the clubs are also doing the same. So that there's a feeder system within the club, so that the system of play that he wants to achieve at the national level is what all clubs are playing. But when you look at the time availability, how much time was spent in terms of looking at the local players, working with the local coaches, that basic system wasn't working as it is, and those are some of the issues.
All right, Hillary, I'll go to you as we wind up. Your final thoughts on Gabriel Ouko as the chairman of the Kenya Rugby Union. Do you think that he is the person that we've been waiting for in terms of the guidance that Kenya needs to be able to take rugby from that level that Godwin has just described to the level that we need to be?
I think first and foremost, Gabriel Ouko is not anywhere new into the rugby fraternity. This is someone who's actually played for the national team, both at 15 and 7-a-side level. He has previously served at the board as a director. He's been a treasurer, and for all intents and purposes, he's actually meant to be holding on as chairman on the interim until the next AGM.
Up until March.
Yeah, that's correct.
But do you think that he is the sort of person to...
Number two, I think Gabriel Ouko has a very sober head on his shoulders, number one. Whether he's actually the one who's coming in to be the messiah, to sort out all the particular problems, I'd actually believe that that is something that has actually been placed on level before, because the problems that are actually moving on through right now do not require a change in the chairmanship or the leadership, but it actually requires a totally different outlook and approach towards the governance and how the sport is actually run. Because if Gabriel Ouko doesn't manage to go around and get that structure into play, it's very likely that he'll probably get himself into the same level of quagmire that officers who've actually served
and
before
his
him
predecessor had.
Yes.
All right, Eddie, I'll come to you. The vice chairperson, Philip Jalango, it would be presumed would have been a successor of Mwangi Modhe in a situation like this, but yet he is not. As you wind up, why do you think, as a person who was part of the decision to bring Gabriel Ouko into the fold as chairperson, why do you think that Philip Jalango did not make it to the apex of rugby in Kenya?
I wouldn't want to discuss specifically why Philip did not make it. Neither would I want to discuss specifically as to why Gabriel made it. It's a board decision. If I gave my position, it's entirely what I thought is. But we were 6, 7 guys, and out of the 6, 7 guys, everyone said we think Gabriel is in a position. Not that automatically a chairmanship should have moved to Philip.
Yeah.
Constitution is clear. If an officer resigns, then you choose another person from amongst yourselves. Yes.
I'm guessing that it would be presumed because he was vice chairperson. But you, much as you don't want to discuss him, he's a very controversial character, and we won't discuss him here. I just want your final word on whether you think Gabriel can deliver.
I think Gabriel is in a much better position. He's been there longer. He's been, in your own words, less controversial. I think at that time we needed such a person. So I think Gabriel, for all reasons, was always going to be our best choice.
All right.
Yes.
Godwin, having stepped out of the game,
Yes.
from at least at the level of being a board member,
Yes.
what are the plans that you'd like to see implemented as we wind up that you were part of in terms of deciding, and how instrumental do you think Gabriel Owuko would be in doing so?
Okay, just to take you back in terms of rugby has been run for a number of years, as Eddie and Hillary have alluded to. And one thing that is very clear, we've had a constitution that has served the game, and as we've said, it's past its time. We basically need to get a new document that serves the game in the current times. We do have a document, and there are mechanisms within the rugby in terms of how to discipline even board members. There's a code of conduct that covers everyone who's involved. Exactly.
Yes.
But even that was a bit contentious, even at board level. Our board members part of this and all that. If you go back to the playing charter of rugby, the first thing on the playing charter is integrity, solidarity, passion, honesty. I mean, you're looking at all these things, and anybody who is involved. I'm still involved in the game as a match official. So for me, when it comes to some of these things, especially coming from the playing charter, are so dear to me. And that is why I felt, let me continue serving the game, because I still train match officials.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to do that. I'm an IRB certified match official trainer.
Yeah. Sorry to cut you short, but I really want to know,
in terms
what
of
do you think Gabriel will bring to...
Without a shadow of doubt, Gabi, I've known him for years, and I think if it comes to person to run Kenyan Rugby, he can. But he needs support and structures to be able to, because he can't do it alone. Without the correct support and without the correct structure, and that's what we're saying, a good CEO, a good CFO, and most importantly, a director of rugby.
Okay.
Because the board needs to work at policy. But Gabriel Owuko, from the man I know, he can be a capable chairman.
All right, very kind words for Gabriel Owuko, and that's where we'll leave it tonight, gentlemen. Godwin Karuga, former board member of the Kenyan Rugby Union, of course, serving in different capacities now. Eddie Omondi, who still serves on the board as the secretary, as well as Hillary Itela. Thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen. Of course, the hope is that rugby will get out of the rut that it's stuck in, and will be able to move forward. That, of course, is the hope of every person, including myself, who is a fan of the sport. We'll take a short break right now, but we come back with sports news here on KTN Weekend Prime, the point of news. Keep your feedback coming in about witch hunters, as well as this discussion that we've just had. Stay with us.